In 2016, CrossFit sat down with a group of affiliate owners to discuss best practices and what thriving affiliate owners were doing in their gyms. The series was well received and continues to be relevant to affiliate owners today. To continue the conversation, we invited some of CrossFit's most experienced coaches, Chris McDonald, Stefan Roche, Eric O'Connor, and Denise Thomas. We're here today to share their knowledge and expertise through the lens of the CrossFit trainer. So I want to take a little bit of time and talk about the Movement One sheets. And you guys are familiar with these. These were published around 2007, originally in the level 1 training guide, and then now they're in the level 2. And so this is a summary sheet that covers teaching, seeing, correcting for each of the 9 foundational movements, as well as looking at the primary points of performance and the execution, as well as common faults. You guys are familiar with these sheets. So do coaches need to memorize this?
Absolutely. So I mean, for the level 1, I used to have my notebook, I would write it out, and then if I needed to reference it. But for me, writing has always been a good way for me to memorize things.
Why? Why do they have to memorize it?
I think it's the foundation, not just for these 9 movements, for everything.
Like, it's the fundamentals right here. If you don't know this stuff, this is where you need your work.
When you're out on the floor and there's so much going on, you can't be trying to think about what the points of performance are for the air squat. You need to be like hips back, knees out, heels down, that's below parallel.
I mean, it's kind of your cheat sheet for what you got to teach and what's going to pop up and what you're going to have to correct.
Right, and I've always kind of thought of these too as, you know, if I had to go and referee a soccer game, or if I had to umpire a baseball game, I couldn't be pulling out the rule book and being like, okay, how many strikes are there, right? Okay, now I'll go moderate that. And so that memorization component, what are some of the ways that you guys have seen coaches take these sheets and memorize them or apply them or utilize them on the gym floor?
I'd look at it, so if you told me to memorize this sheet right here with all the stuff written on it, that would be hard for me to do. But when you connect it to the movement now, and you're watching someone move, so when I was a police officer, you know, the penal code's like this thick, and the vehicle code's this thick, and they were like, you don't have to memorize this. Just recognize when something's wrong, and then you can figure it out. Well, you should know this. You should have it in your mind. It's not that long. But the best thing is, can you recognize that something's wrong? I'm trying to be realistic here. So if there's coaches out there who haven't memorized this, first step is recognizing when something is wrong. And then, you know, being able to go back, look at this, and apply it. And over time, I think, as you coach hundreds and hundreds of air squats, hundreds and hundreds of push presses, sumo deadlift high pulls, then it will be ingrained in you. But it's really connecting what your eye sees to the movement and knowing. So I don't know if I could spout these off verbatim, but you could show me a squat and I could pick out the one that's wrong. I could pick out the things that are right, and that's where you want to get to.
I know an eye-opening moment for me years ago in the push press was basically just forgetting the timing piece, right? So timing, we look at the push press, right? If you go here, and we're looking for, you know, extend the hips before the arms press. So if there's an element of these that you don't see or know, how likely are you to cue it, right? And so how does that play out just from coach development?
I think coaching development's exactly right. I think when we see a lot of coaches, you know, especially at the level 2s, they come in, you can get them to this stuff like, hey, what should your back position be on neutral spine? Like, do you want to keep it flat? Cool. Where should the weight be in your feet? Oh, it should be in your heels. Where do you want your knees? Out. How should you initiate a squat? Hips back. But if you ask them to give them 5, they're not going to know. They're going to be like set up your feet shoulder width apart. And it's like, you know, what this does is it creates organization. So if I can watch from the front of a squat, like I'm watching neutral spine, line of action, knees, heels, depth, like I already know like where the faults are right away. So like what the coach is going to do eventually, it's just going to organize their thoughts where that frees you up. I always compare it to like RAM, you know, in a computer, if you have 1 million windows and applications opened up and you're trying to think that hard, that personality is not going to come out. You're going to miss seeing and correcting because you're thinking too much. Just let it happen organically, and that happens through studying.
Yeah, and so there, every once in a while we'll hear, oh, this is such a textbook approach though, right? And Boz always says this really well, that there's an art and a science in coaching, right? And so to a degree, this is the textbook application, this is the science, the memorization. How does that expand and allow you to express that art side, if you will? right? And it's giving you the baseline to be able to then go riff and work it on the gym floor.
And we talked about a lesson plan for our course, and we were talking at breakfast. What do we want people to show up with when they're coaching? Yeah, sure, a lesson plan for the whole workout, but also a plan to attack a specific movement. And like Chris was saying.
Yeah, and so what are some of the ways that you guys envision or have used these sheets for coach development or on the gym floor or in a drill or in an exercise?
For teaching, so just to go back to how do you apply this, is you can look at it in terms of how does the movement occur. In the squat, the first thing that happens is you brace. Then what? Hips back. Then what? Knees out. Then what? Heels down, get below parallel. And it's the way it happens. If you took an untrained eye or someone that wasn't in the fitness industry and you said, just tell me what body part moves first. I could ask my mom, she'd be like, the bottom, right? That's what she'd say, because she's British, the bottom. And then I'd say, all right, Mom, what other body part do you see moving now? And she would probably say the knees, or she would probably say the shoulders are going down. Whatever that is, you're looking for those landmarks, and then you apply it to this. But back to your baseline piece this is something that we should really emphasize here, is that everyone has different limb lengths and limitations and tightness and pre-existing injuries, that we don't want people to take this and say, it says in the level 2 guide, heels under your shoulders. And you're like, yeah, but I can't get it. It says it right here. Do it. No, that's just your freedom to then explore and look for the other things we need to see. So we then tweak. We tweak from there, but we have to start somewhere. Like anywhere else, first time you do Fran, you know what you've got, baseline. We don't stay there. We tweak so we can get the results. And it's the same with these things. They're a guide for freedom.
Right. Yeah, a guide for freedom is a really good way to put it, because no matter your limb length, we're still looking for those 5 primary points of performance to be present. And how we bring all 5 of those to life is going to be a little bit specific to each athlete because of their different anatomies and things like that, potentially.
This is a great way to start a discussion with a coach if you're just talking to them and you want to see if they know the points of performance. I'm not saying quiz them on their memorization, but it's just say, well, explain to me what that looks like. And the ones they struggle on is like, great, that's the next time I get you on the floor, that's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you what, the lumbar curve looks like. I'm going to show you what knees out tracking with the toes looks like.
Yeah, and I think it really comes back to, just through all of this, is you can't cue what you don't know to see, right? And so it's just a launching point. And for many coaches, this has been a foundation and something that they've returned to over and over again to refine, to refresh, to review, to help mentor and coach other coaches, and it's just a simple.
Great reference, guys.
Yeah,
right
exactly.
On your point
5 pages.
about not seeing timing, and then you're like, okay, I never see it, I should look for that. There's another way how you can learn as a coach to see things in other people. Do you guys know what it is? I've become mediator. Demo, when you work on your demo, right? At the level 2, we see it all the time. We slam them on their demo, and they're like, oh, I thought I was going below parallel all the time, but I actually have to get a lot lower. I wonder now if that's happening in people in my gym, or, oh, I didn't realize that the vertical dip meant that I just dropped straight down. I've been sending my hips back this whole time. I'm gonna go look for that now in the gym, and the struggle that you have in correcting yourself gives you some tools to go correct other people.
And I think to that point, too, a lot of coaches, their eye can see it, but without the framework, they gloss over it. And so simple things like looking at a vertical torso, right? Being able to take that and say, now I'm going to look for that only, and then they instantly identify it. It's just they weren't looking for it. So this gives them the structure to look for it.
And they do, and it's funny at the level 2, you guys correct me if you've seen something different, but I'll be like, okay, and dip and hold, and I'm walking with Eric. I'm like, Eric, what do you see there? Do you see the shoulder and the hip? And he's like, looks good to me. And I'm like, okay, and I go over and I push the athlete back a little into true vertical, and you're like, oh, yeah, but it wasn't bad. And I'm like, yeah, but it was a fault. Yeah. Like, a fault is a fault is a fault. Some are more egregious than others, but a subtle fault could potentially prevent that advanced athlete where we have to get better as they get better. Could pull them in their toes slightly, around the face, they drop that heavy push press. So they see things, but I just don't think they bring a lot of gravity to the fact that it needs to be corrected because it doesn't look dangerous.
I think another thing is I mean, this list looks relatively simple, right? You know, you can find different textbooks out there just on the squat, and it's like 38 different things to look for. Well, I got 5 major things to look for, and then subtle things really after that, which is probably like an issue for me when I first started coaching. I focused probably a bit too much on the small little nuances, which may not make a big difference. Once I started zoning in on these things and these faults, and everything seemed to get better. And then the progressions given here, like this push jerk progression changed my life.
That's the one you use for.
It's the one I used for 4 years. Like the first time I taught the push jerk, the person, honestly, they left and never came back again. Because I made it really confusing. I was using complex terminology. I went to my L1 and Bosman taught me this progression. And I learned to kind of teach it simple like that. And I was surprised at how effective it was when I focused on that.
I think the thing too is like this is a framework, and you know we talk about the level 2 is it not just for these 9 movements, but how you look at any movement. And I think that's part of the genius behind the Bergener warm-up, right? Is that every single movement or in that progression has a specific point of performance. So dip and stand, we're looking at vertical torso. Dip, drive, shrug, we're looking at timing. Muscles or snatch, high pull, we're looking at bar path and elbow positioning. Muscle snatch, turnover, overhead squat drops, footwork. Like everything has a specific purpose and reason that's going to refine movement over the long term. So taking this and moving it into your other ones, it just really gives you good organization, which is just going to, again, free up that RAM where you can really dig into seeing and correcting.
So if you're a motivated coach and you're alone in an affiliate and you don't know where to start, you start here, you videotape yourself doing some of these movements, and you can learn. I mean, what I would hate to think is that someone thinks, well, I'd love to do this, I have a passion for it, I love teaching people, but I can't get into it because I'm on my own. No, the resources are there, just you gotta be a little creative. I love the demoing. So if you videotape yourself demoing, you'll learn a lot. Just be your own coach.
I know what you're talking about. But to your point, Eric, too, about the complexity, the coaches that we work with at level 2s, there's some really talented coaches. And they know so much. Like some of them, I'm like, I don't know what you just said. Like they're so smart. And when we do these drills with them, they see. And I don't think that they're able to really potentiate how good they are because of they have so much going on in their head. There really are so many great trainers out there. And when we do these drills, it comes alive. They see it. We're like, oh, I never really knew I could only look at one thing. And I'm like, but if you look, you see it, right? They're like, yeah. I'm like, so just have a plan and really maximize everything you know, because you are a very good trainer, but you're not doing your self-service right now because maybe you're not planning correctly or you're thinking you have to wow people. You don't. You just have to keep it simple, look for the small things and give simple corrections. So this stuff helps with that. So everything you've done, let's apply it here. And then the application is really what makes you a good trainer, not necessarily how much you know, but how you apply it.
Cool. All right, the one sheets. Use them, memorize them. Do it.